It's easier, especially in this day and age where those who are perceived victims are often rewarded in the form of social clout, in the form of job promotions and advancements, in the form of financial support. It's way easier to say that you're a victim than it is to say, I had an unfortunate situation, an unfortunate circumstance. I was the target of physical or emotional or sexual abuse. I was the recipient of racism. Like, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't exist. I'm just saying, okay, and what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Make yourself into a different person through your own actions and your own behaviors. And it's so incredible that we get to do that, but it's hard and it is a challenge, and there's a lot of risk associated with that. And it's always easier, at least in the short term, to say you owe me something rather than you owe it to yourself.
Absolutely. We all, right. That's a whole different topic, isn't it? We owe ourselves a lot more effort and grace than we give ourselves. We're the first ones to be our worst enemy, and to tell ourselves, no, we can't do this, or that's too hard, or that's not worth it, or whatever. It does have to, it starts with us, but then typically also we need to reach out and we need that support system in our lives, whether that's our wife or our family or dear friends or mentors or coaches. And that's,
or all of the above,
or all of that. Exactly right.
Like I go to jujitsu a couple of times in the evening each week, and in the morning a couple of times. And there's guys that I train jujitsu with, and some of them I can ask and have some serious conversations about business or personal life. And frankly, I can't have the same type of conversation with my wife about some of that stuff.
Right.
And other things, I can talk with her about it, but it's just different. And I don't withhold that information. But then there's other situations where I need to talk with my wife about that, and my buddies and my brothers aren't going to hack it in this particular instance. So
right.
we have, it's like a baseball team, or a football team. And so each player has their role and their responsibility and their duty, and they're all working somewhat independent of each other. But when you combine them, all of those different roles and responsibilities, it makes a well-oiled functioning machine. And then you score or win, or, whatever the objective is.
No, that's right.
Everybody doing their own part. And then it's the symphony, it's the orchestra that makes it sound really, really good when it's all together.
That's right. There's no bigger team in sports than a football team. That's what makes football so interesting to me. Not just because it's my favorite sport, because there's 53 guys that are contributing to the result. All sports are great in their own right. Whether it's soccer or basketball or baseball, hockey, they're all terrific. And
soccer's a little debatable.
Soccer's debatable. We won't put that in the top four. Hockey, baseball, basketball, football, right? But football, there's so many parts to it, right? So there's special teams and offense and defense, and different guys getting substituted, and it's an unbelievable thing. But when it all works together, it's like a symphony. And it can be beautiful, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year.
Woo, woo. Right.
Sorry, that's where we're from. We're in Tampa. So,
oh, you are? Okay. I figured as much. But yeah. That's a pretty cool thing. And then you got to realize, you have the head of the team as well. So right. I would say it's, probably the coach would be the head. You have the players, of course, Captain Tom Brady, things like that. But you take the coach, and I figure that's my role, right? Here's the objective. Here's what I want to accomplish. Here's the parameters in which we're going to do it. And then what I need to do is I need to bring the right players, and I need to put them in the right situations and the right positions. And I need to make sure they're trained, and the way that I would liken that to real life is that they're aware of what I'm trying to accomplish. I give them permission to talk with me and to do things and say things that I need to hear in a way that I need to hear them, so that I can accomplish what it is I'm out to accomplish. So we are the coach, then we have all of our players, and we put them in the right. And you know what? Sometimes a player doesn't work out, and it's hard because you got to let that player go. And that might be somebody from high school that you've known forever, or you went through some similar experiences, and you actually have to go have some sort of heart to heart and say, hey, you're not on the team anymore. And that's a difficult thing to do. But if you want to accomplish the objective, these are tough decisions that mature people make. And it isn't personal. It just means I'm going this way and this is what I need in order to accomplish these things.
Absolutely.
And by the way, people will say this is selfish, and maybe it is to a degree. Let's talk about that. It might be selfish that I need this, so here's the team I've organized. But if you take care of yourself, you're going to be more capable of taking care of others. And also, maybe the guy that you've had on your team forever that doesn't belong on quote unquote your team, when you release that individual in the world, he can then go find a team that he belongs to, something that will serve him better. I think about this because in my past life, I was a financial advisor, and then I managed retail stores. I did a lot of different things. And I would occasionally need to let people go. And that was a hard thing to do, especially initially, because I didn't want to do that. That was that person's income and their livelihood, and they probably derived a sense of meaning and purpose and satisfaction from it, but they just weren't the member of the team. And I had a very hard time with this until I talked with my manager or district manager. And at the time she had said, Ryan, you actually might be the person that's holding this individual back. And there came an instant where I let a person go. It was very hard for me. I didn't want to let that person go because I cared about them and I wanted them to be successful. I let that person go, and it ended up running into them several years later. And I remember them saying to me, you know what? I'm so glad that you fired me. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? Right. And he said to me, he said, if you didn't fire me, I may have just been somewhat mediocre at the position for potentially years. But because you fired me, it forced me to take a real hard look at my life, to re-examine what I was doing, and then to find some employment that I actually really loved. And he actually ended up going to start his own business and was very successful with it. And it all came because I was willing to have a difficult conversation with somebody that it needed to be had that way. So
wow, that's great.
It might be selfish, but it's also serving. And also when we talk about selfish, you think about, I think about this a lot, charity, for example, charitable work. Sometimes the mission of your team is I gotta excel in my career, or I got to excel with my family, or I need to serve in the community, or I need to coach a little league sports team. And if you have all the right players in all the right positions and you've got all of your stuff dialed in, then you're more capable of serving charity, organizations, businesses, people. But it starts with you and then it expands from there.
No doubt about that. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. All relationships are not destined, or I should say aren't designed to be lasting.
Sometimes priorities shift and change. And so an example is when I was a financial advisor before Order of Man, I partnered up with a good friend who I got into the business with. His name is Greg Black. And we became really close friends, and we helped each other and talked to each other through a slowing practice and growing a practice and everything else. And he had his own firm and I had my own thing going on. And eventually we ended up partnering together. He moved into the town I was in. We formed a formal partnership, and we did that for several months. And it was great. There was a lot of benefit for both of us. And then he ended up moving away, moving to Northern Utah from Southern Utah. And so we dissolved our partnership, and that was the end of it. It wasn't bad. It was amicable. We're still friends. And he went on to continue to grow his practice. I started doing Order of Man in March of 2015. 2017 rolls around. And because we maintained a relationship, I called him up. I said, hey, I'm thinking of selling my financial planning practice. Would you be interested in buying it, purchasing it from me? Long story short, he was, and he ended up buying my financial planning practice. So sometimes things just change. The priorities change. It's not bad. There wasn't anything wrong. You don't think less of the person. It just changed. And maybe you circle back in a different context, and maybe you don't.
Right.
But I also think about my relationship with my children. My oldest is in the next couple of days, he's turning 13 years old. Our relationship is changing. It's different than it was because I've got a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old as well. It's all different. And with my 13-year-old, we can have more deeper conversations. We can work on things together. And then at times he's like, I don't want to hold your hand or whatever, or I don't want to talk with you about that, or I want to call this person or hang out with this person or do that thing, not with you. And that's good. That's actually natural. It would be unnatural for me to try to keep him in the relationship as if he was a 7-year-old boy. That would be unnatural, but it's natural. And so we let relationships evolve. It's good for him. It's good for me. It's the way it should be. We just got to be very careful of clinging on to that stuff because we do damage to ourselves and others.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. And that's a perfect segue to what I wanted to get into, which is that difference between malehood and manhood. If you would, because obviously it was mentioned at the start of the episode here, what is that difference, and why is that so meaningful to really understand that there is a difference between those two?
Well, I think it's important we define the terms because, as you said earlier, there's so many misconceptions and everything's misconstrued and nobody knows like male. I made a post on Twitter and I said, you don't need to say biological male. It's redundant. It's just not necessary. A male is, by its very definition, biologically male. And I had people push back on that, which is very strange.
Yes.
And they said, well, people that just to be a male, you just believe you are. No, you don't. Male is a biological makeup. All right. So my boys, they're male. They're male Homo sapiens. They're males. Okay. We don't expect them to be men because they're still boys. They're adolescent, but they are male. Right. All right. So that's what a male is. So at its foundation, biologically male. Second, we have this term called masculinity. Well, what is masculinity? Masculinity is simply a set of patterns, beliefs, behaviors, activities associated with your biological makeup, predominantly testosterone and other hormones that are found in higher quantities in male Homo sapiens, other animals as well, but in males. And this biological makeup that we have is what makes us masculine. Left unchecked, it could be destructive. It could be dangerous. It could be violent. It could be chaotic. It could be wild, left unchecked. I think about the book Lord of the Flies.
Oh, right? Perfect example. Yes.
So you have these boys without any leadership. Father figures, leadership, no manliness. We'll get to that in a second. Zero manliness. It's masculinity, sure, absolutely, but it isn't directed and isn't harnessed. There's even stories. I should find the source on this. But there was in Africa, there was a tribe or a group, an organization of elephants that I think the bull elephant had been killed or was. And
so it was all juvenile males.
Yes. Juvenile male elephants. And they introduced destroying everything.
Yes.
A wake of collateral damage in its path. And then they introduced a bull male into the thing and he checked them. Right. And organize, and this is how we behave. This is what we do.
And everything leveled off and came back to normal.
As it should be. As it should, right? So we have male, biologically male, masculinity, a set of virtues and characteristics associated with our biological makeup. And then you have manliness. And manliness is the ability to harness your masculinity to productive outcomes for yourself and the people that you care for. So our motto, you can see it, I think it's, right there on my hat, protect, provide, preside. That's what I feel like we as men, not to be confused with males, because I don't expect my boys to do this. They're boys still. But as men, it's my job to be a protector, a provider, and a presider, which is synonymous with leadership. And what I do, or at least I strive to do, I'm not perfect, is to take the biological makeup I have, my masculinity, and harness it in a way that allows me to serve other people, to protect other people, to make money, to serve in my community, to lead my family, to equip myself with the skills to protect should we be in a natural disaster, an emergency, or a violent encounter. And I'm harnessing the masculinity into something that we call manliness, which is productive and effective outcomes for the people I'm trying to serve. That's the distinction. That's the framework. There's no question about it. It's not subject to interpretation. It's not open for debate.